The Philip Leverhulme Prize is an award that's made to an individual to reflect their contribution so far and potential what they could be doing, and to create the opportunity to do that work. My work really focuses on the archaeological record and changes in human society that occur in the last 10,000 years. And really one of the big ones that we have an interest in is the shift from hunter-gatherer ways of life to agricultural societies. So what we do and how it impacts on the world around us. A really important part of that record is found underwater. It's here we get really high resolution environmental records, but also the organic artifacts. So it can be the missing part of the archaeological record. And what the prize really offered was a chance to develop some of those skills and expertise in a way that would be hard to do in any other situation.
I was working on the history of race, and in particular I'd written a book about how foreign people are brought to Britain throughout the 19th century and put on show, and why that was so important for histories of anthropology. And the Leverhulme clearly liked it and awarded me the prize as a result. It was an extraordinary opportunity, mostly because of the freedom it provided to do the kind of research I wanted. So I was doing a project on the history of endangered peoples at the time, but the prize gave me the resources to be able to turn that into a much bigger project on the history of extinction, which is what the book has become.
I'm a demographer and computational social scientist at the University of Oxford, and I was awarded the prize for my interdisciplinary contributions to population studies, and in particular for my work in advancing a new area of demography, digital and computational demography. Digitalization is rapidly affecting our populations and also creating new data sources for demographic research. My research tackles these questions and develops new methods, and also asks substantive questions about digitalization and its effects on population dynamics globally.
The Philip Leverhulme Prize had a massive impact on my career, really. One, there were research outputs, so contributions to knowledge, but there was also an impact in terms of understanding of how you apply for and manage grants, which has helped develop my career considerably. But also, this was a collaborative, it wasn't just me. I had people working with me on these projects who've now gone on to their own successful careers as well.
The prize was transformative, both in terms of public recognition of my research, but also because it provided an opportunity to completely transform my project. And ultimately, my second book is the reason I was able to take up a chair at the University of Manchester not that long ago.
The prize has helped me build my research group. I'm passionate about working with early career researchers and students. The prize has also given us a platform to reach out and build new collaborations and partnerships so that we can generate meaningful impact from our work.
I think, like all recipients, I'm incredibly grateful for the prize. In the arts and humanities, it's not easy to come by these sorts of opportunities, and so this marks a really significant chance to do things that at the time just weren't possible in any other way.